We are continuing our coverage on the death of Mobile police officer Sean Tuder, killed in the line of duty this afternoon, shot to death. Former Mobile police chief and current Mobile County Sheriff Sam Cochran now joins us on the phone right now. Sheriff, thank you so much for taking your time to do this.
Sure, you're welcome, Byron.
I know that the Sheriff's Department joins their fellow lawmen in mourning the death of Sean Tuder. You've been through this as Chief of Police. You've been through this, but with officers that were killed in vehicle accidents. Tell us what happens within the department when something like this happens.
It's just some of the darkest hours and darkest days in the department when something like this happens, because it affects so many different people. Of course, the condolences to the family and the family members of the officer, but then his closest friends, you know, they'll go through mourning and suffer a lot of anxieties and stuff, and so you really have to pull the department together and look out for one another, support one another, monitor those officers. You know, the whole department, and as well as all of law enforcement in this area, will sort of be on extra edge in the coming days because of this happening. And And then the officers that work there, they'll receive all kinds of different pressures. You know, their loved ones of, you know, existing officers, their loved ones will second guess whether they should be a police officer. And although they've decided they want to pursue a career in law enforcement, they'll feel more personal stressors put on them by people maybe trying to suggest they should seek a different job. And so many, many things happen. And of course, we do have, you know, counselors and grief counselors that are available to members of law enforcement when they go through something like this.
Sheriff, let me ask you this. I know that Chief Batiste and also District Attorney Ashley Rich were very, very careful to say that they are making sure that the front end of the investigation will be absolutely by the book, by the letter, so that they can get the prosecution they all want. Tell me exactly what is going on right now at MPD.
Well, I'm sure they're interviewing all the witnesses that were there on the scene. They're processing through the evidence. They have crime scene investigators that will have collected and gathered scientific evidence at the scene. They'll, you know, be pulling all kinds of data, records, phone records. They'll develop sequences of time events. They'll look for any kind of video in the area that would capture any of the event on video. All of those things, and it's just to be an enormous amount of material. And the reason it is so important, as Chief Batiste and Mr. Rich said, to get it right at the front, because a capital murder case such as this will be involves the most heaviest of all of scrutiny, because it could result in a death penalty case or life without parole, and those cases have automatic appeals, and you know, just lawyers make a living sifting through every possible detail and every possible way of filing appeals on these type cases. Surely.
Are you at liberty to share anything that you've heard so far about the investigation?
Well, I've been briefed on a number of the details, but it's not really, wouldn't be my position to disclose the details that I'm made aware of, you know, other than to know that, you know, the officer was, you know, going to effect the arrest of the arrest suspect that's been featured on the news this past week, and that the suspect had a gun and in a struggle and was able to shoot the officer and kill him. But somewhat unusual that a kid so young, but it's what we're faced with today. There's so many guns on the streets. Just gun trafficking goes on, and so we just see so many more handguns, and the criminals have so much easier access to handguns, and so it was, you know, nothing for him to be armed.
Sheriff, yeah, and the mayor even spoke to that as well, but let me just ask you this. What was your initial reaction when you heard about this tragedy today?
My initial reaction was it's a young officer, and we have just a lot of young officers in law enforcement today, and times are changing rapidly, and it's such a challenge to all of the officers in law enforcement, and it just saddens me so bad to see another young up-and-coming officer lose their life doing what they love to do and protecting the public. And while the public generally is hugely in support of law enforcement, you just have a small portion of the public that is just very critical and second-guessing of law enforcement. But you'll see how the citizenry will rise up and offer support for this officer and his family as well they should.
Sheriff Sam Cochran, thank you so much for sharing that information with us, as well as your thoughts on what's going on in our community these days. We appreciate it very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. We'll be right back.